Sairam students, welcome to another lecture of English literature. Today we are going to start with a new poem from Beehive, A Legend of Northland, written by Phoebe Cary. Let me tell you about our poetess. Phoebe Cary was born on 4th September 1822 in Mount Healthy, Ohio, United States. She died on 31st July 1871 at Newport, Rhode Island, United States. She was an American poetess. She has written many poems, and one of the popular ones that we are going to learn today is A Legend of Northland. So before starting with the poem, let me give you a quick introduction. A Legend of the Northland is a ballad. Now, what is a ballad? A ballad is a poem narrating a story in short stanzas. Ballad is such kind of a poem which tells a story in short stanzas, and in the poem, all the stanzas comprise 4 lines. Okay, so ballad is such kind of poem. It's a kind of poem which narrates a story in short stanzas, and each stanza comprises of 4 lines. So in total there are 16 stanzas in this poem, and these stanzas will tell us a story. Ballads are a part of folk culture or popular culture, and they are passed on orally from one generation to the next. So the traditional stories which were told long ago, they are passed on from one generation to the next one. They are narrated in the form of ballads. And what are this folk culture? It is the story of any area, okay, any place. Folk culture comprises of traditional stories. As I mentioned earlier, they are traditional stories which are passed on from one generation to the next generation. Now, this story is of the Northland area. I'm sure students, you know where is Northland. This area is near the North Pole. This exact place is not specified, but Northland definitely means the area in the northernmost part of the earth, that is near the North Pole. And legend, what does it mean? It means a historical story, the one which is very old and has been passed on from generation to generation. Okay, it's a historical story. So, as we have understood what is the introduction, let us move towards the theme of this poem. This poem is basically based upon it is based on the theme that greed is a grave sin. Greedy people, they do not deserve the blessings and comforts of human life. Okay, greedy people, they don't deserve all the comforts of mankind. Human beings should thus acquire qualities of kindness, fellow feeling, understanding the feelings of others, empathize, understand the situations, understand the situation of the poor people, condition of the poor people. The little woman's greed in this poem stopped her from sharing even her smallest cake with hungry Saint Peter, thus earning his wrath. So Saint Peter got angry on this little woman because of her greediness. Her greediness stopped her from sharing even the smallest cake that she made. So let's move ahead and understand this poem. Now the title of the poem clearly states that the poem is about a legend from the cold region of Northland. And like every legend, it is a story passed from one generation to another. And it is believed to be true, even though there is no evidence to establish its truth. But then the title, it clearly states that it is a legend. And the title is appropriate as it introduces the narrative form of the story, which is to impart moral values. The place where the action of the story takes place is also clearly mentioned in the title. Hence, the title is apt, or we can say hence the title is apt for launching a mythological story like this. Now, let us move ahead and read out this poem. I'm sure students, you are having your Beehive textbook. Hence, you can go through this poem along with me. A Legend of the Northland by Phoebe Carey. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny furry clothes. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe this true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, he came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. Therefore, she kneaded another, and still a smaller one, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter, and fire to keep you warm. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard, dry wood. Then up she went to the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as a coal in the flame. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. So, I hope students you were reading the poem along with me. Now, let us start with the explanation part, and we will do that stanza wise. Okay, so let's start with the first stanza. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So here, in the region around the North Pole, the duration of the day is very less, because its position is such that the sun's rays reach for a very less time. When this area is experiencing winter season, the duration of night is very long, and during the day the time hours are very less. Now if you see in line 4, they refers to the people living in this region. Now the poet, what does he say? He says that the duration of the night time is so long that the people cannot sleep them through. If they go to bed, if they go to bed, take a few hours of sleep, and then they wake up and it is still night time. So he wants to emphasize on the fact that the duration of the night is very long. Even when people sleep through the night and when they wake up, still they could see that it is night time. Okay, let us move ahead to the next stanza, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny furry clothes. Sledges. Sledges refers to a vehicle on runners for conveying, for taking goods or loads or passengers over snow or ice, and it is often pulled by draught animals. To harness. To harness means to tie the reindeers with a rope to the sledges so that it can be used for transportation purpose. Swift, something which runs very fast, something that has tremendous speed. Now, in this stanza, the poet says that the Northland region experiences severe cold conditions. It's very cold over there. It is a snowy area. The reindeer, it's an animal which is mainly found in this polar region. People tie the reindeers to sledges and then the reindeers pull the sledges. These reindeers are mainly used for transportation or transportation purpose. Okay, for carrying loads of goods and also passengers. So he adds that the children who live here, they look like young ones of a bear because they wear those funny looking clothes which are made up of fur and which is like the furry skin of a bear. So the poet here, he says that the swift reindeer, they are mainly used for transportation purpose. Okay, these reindeers pull the sledges, and the children, he adds that the children over here, they look like young ones of a bear. Now the next stanza. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe this true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Curious refers to strange. See, in line 1, they refer to the parents or elders, and them refers to the children or the younger generation. Now, the elders of the Northland region. See, in the initial two stanzas, the poetess Philip Carey has provided us with a background of this place. Okay, this Northland. What kind of place is it? What kind of people live here? And now in this stanza, he tells us that the elders of the Northland region, they tell a strange and interesting story to the younger generation. As we learned that the stories, they are being passed on from one generation to another generation. The poet says that he doesn't think that the story is true. There is no fact, there is no evidence to prove that the story is true. But if he tells a story to the reader, maybe the reader could learn a lesson from it in order to give a good message, in order to give a good make people understand what are the good ways of life. The poet wants us to listen to this story. So the story gives an important message. Now in stanza 4, the story begins. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, you know. Now, who is the Saint Peter? Saint Peter is an apostle of Christ. He is a disciple or a follower of Jesus Christ. Preaching to deliver religious talk. Okay, now the poetess tells us here the story is about Saint Peter. When Saint Peter used to live in the world and he used to go around, what he used to do? He used to give religious lectures to the people, just like all the saints do. he also used to deliver, he also used to give religious lecture. And at that time, this incident happened. Now, before we start with the next stanza, let me tell you students, we are going to stop here and we'll continue the remaining stanzas in the next lecture. Okay, so I hope students you understood the first 4 stanzas. It gives us the background of the poem and just the introduction of the story. All right, so do click on the link below so that you can complete your home assignment. Thank you so much.